At least 70 people are dead after a bomb attack in Mogadishu. And although the Somali capital is no stranger to violence, this is being called one of the deadliest attacks to hit the city in recent memory. Laura McQuillan joins us now with the latest. Laura, what do we know?
John, this is being described as a suicide truck bombing, and as you mentioned, the number of dead about 70 now, but the number is rising, some putting it a bit higher than that as well, and another 50 people also wounded too. Authorities warning that the number of dead will rise further, and those who've been killed include a number of university students, as well as police officers, security personnel, after that bombing at a security checkpoint during the morning rush hour today. Again, one of the deadliest attacks in recent memory there, certainly the deadliest of the year. A witness spoke to Reuters and described hearing screams for help, but also police shooting soon after the bomb went off. There's been no immediate claim of responsibility, though many are pointing the finger already at one group, an Islamist militant group named Shabab. You've likely heard of them before. They are an Al-Qaeda-linked group that's often behind these types of attacks in Somalia. They oppose the UN-backed government there. They often target places like checkpoints like this, also hotels that are popular with foreign tourists. They were blamed for a truck bombing 2 years ago that killed 500 people, but they didn't take responsibility then either. So that will be something to watch out for today. Will one group say they were responsible for this attack? All of this raising concerns about security in that country, John, because the Somalian forces are set to be taking over control of security in Somalia from the African Union peacekeepers over the next year or so. But attacks like this certainly fuel fears that they are not prepared as yet to do so. So again, what we know at this point in time is that at least 70 people have been killed in this, 50 more injured, and just chaos right now, John.
Thanks for the latest, Laura.
You're welcome.
Well, for more on this, we've reached out to Michael S. Smith II, and he's in Beaufort, South Carolina. He's a terrorism analyst and lecturer with Johns Hopkins University's Global Security Studies program. Professor, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate your time here on the holiday season. What can you tell us about what you make of this latest attack in Mogadishu?
John, thanks for bringing me on. I think that this is most likely Al-Shabaab, Al-Qaeda's East Africa branch, because of the type of attack, the impact of the bombing. Islamic State is very much active in Somalia, but certainly not to the scale of activity that we see with Al-Shabaab. Just 2 hours ago, Islamic State, via its Iraq agency news service, claimed responsibility for an attack in Mogadishu and assassination of a member of the military. And that's more in line with the types of terrorist attacks that we see Islamic State members perpetrating in Somalia, these small-scale, what they call targeted assassinations, whereas with Al-Shabaab, you tend to see these larger impact suicide bombings like this and other attacks that have much greater impact in terms of the body count that's produced from these attacks.
Can we read into the timing of this at all? What might be the motive behind it?
It's not uncommon for these types of attacks perpetrated by Al-Shabaab members to correspond with events that could be construed as setbacks for the group's leadership in particular. I'm not sure if this is a attack that is intended to be revenge for something that has happened within the group. But I do think it's important to consider that this is not out of the norm in terms of what we see from Al-Shabaab in Somalia. Going back to 2015, the group also noted in an official video that it is intent upon redrawing the map of East Africa. And so I think it's been reasonable to anticipate that we would see this uptick in attacks like this within Somalia, as well as in Kenya and other proximate countries. This is very much about engaging with several segments of a larger global audience for this. Locally, of course, this helps Al-Shabaab remind locals that it is very much a potent enterprise, and this helps them with extorting money, what they call taxing the civilian populace. It also helps to, put the government on guard in ways that call into question the government's credibility, its capabilities to manage terrorist groups' activities within its borders, other illicit enterprises within its borders. So this also helps to, in some respects, endear certain members of the local community to the group, especially those who have grievances about the government, grievances about Western influence within Somalia. So this really has many dynamics in terms of the impact on various segments of the audience for attacks like this. But again, I do think it's more likely this is al-Shabaab than Islamic State's branch within Somalia.
What you're describing there, willing local allies, ability to fundraise, presumably an ability to blend into the community, is sort of a classic scenario for a terrorist organization that can prove almost impossible to root out.
Right. Well, the blending in part is a little bit different with al-Shabaab. Al-Shabaab is very much an overt enterprise. Yes, it does conduct covert operations, surprise attacks like this, but it is very much involved with, again, extorting taxes, as they put it, from local civilian populaces throughout the country. And really what this highlights is that the terrorist organization has succeeded in fundamentally undermining the Westphalian system within East Africa. And its agenda is certainly beyond the borders of Somalia itself, but that's where its primary base of operations exists. And of course, it shouldn't be lost on anyone that this is a component of al-Qaeda, and it is very much engaged with the business of interacting with people over social media here in the West. Much of its propaganda is tailored for people in the West in terms of English language materials that they will put out when they claim responsibility for attacks like this.
The challenge, though, presumably, is for those in the West who care about the future of places like the Horn of Africa in terms of being able to take some kind of action. How do governments act, or how should they act, to try to prevent this from continuing?
Well, there needs to be much more aggressive intelligence and military action against al-Shabaab. I mean, this is not really outside of the dynamic of what you saw with Islamic State in Iraq and Syria in terms of controlling territory, controlling population centers, again, that capability to generate revenue vis-a-vis what they call taxation. And it's something that's unfortunately what we're seeing in terms of rhetoric from the United States leadership, that it suggests that this group has the upper hand in terms of durability, because there seems to be this mission creep that has affected decisions about how we're allocating resources against it. I mean, there needs to be a much more significant disruptive ground effort, air campaign augmenting that to deny this group control of population centers, territory, smuggling routes, etc. And the Kenyans have succeeded in doing that with the support of the United States and other governments in the past. But I think that right now what you see in terms of the UN-backed government in Somalia, it's been very easy for the intelligence services there to be infiltrated by al-Shabaab. So back to it, it's a matter of competency, and I don't think that there's a local competency with counterterrorism, counterinsurgency that can really mitigate against the long-term threat posed by al-Shabaab.
Michael, you've helped us really understand the background behind the headline today. We appreciate your time.